Rooted in faith, rooted in family, rooted in values, rooted in traditions. Welcome to the Rooted Outdoors podcast. Welcome to the Rooted Outdoors podcast. I'm your co-host, Corey Bauman. My other co-host, Dave Ashworth. And at the bottom there is our guest tonight from the Element podcast. Got Tyler and KC. What's up, guys?
Howdy.
What's happening?
Guys are in their car. They're on the road as usual.
Yeah. We've been doing some video work today and riding around, daydreaming and whatnot. So talking about deer, you know.
Yeah. I hear you, man. Well, we're happy to have you. Just excited to have you here and chat with you tonight. I appreciate you giving us your time. And first, before we jump into introducing you guys and who you guys are, Dave, you got any updates for everybody out there?
Yeah, quick update. So our youth hunt is coming up soon. I was out, we have this place called The Farm. It's my in-laws family farm that we spend a lot of our time hunting. And that's where we do the youth hunt every year. And I was out there on Saturday. It's an hour, 45-minute drive. So I was up pretty early, to say the least, to get out before the sunrise. And it was a cool morning. One of the things that I like to do when I'm scouting for turkey is get up in my deer stands. I like being elevated. I can see more, and the turkeys can see me a little bit less. Kind of just get a better look of what's happening, where they're roosting, where they're flying down. And it was really cool. We snuck into the tree. I wasn't sure if we should because I heard them gobbling all in that area. And I was like, you know what? Like, we came out here, like, we got to just get in the tree. This is what I want to do. So we snuck in, and we actually had a huge tom roosted probably like 40 yards, out in front of us a little bit. And I didn't know it, but he ended up flying down. As soon as he flies down, I've never seen this before, and I actually got it on video. But as soon as he flies down, a bald eagle came in and tried to take him out. I don't know. He kept flying around. The turkey's like running around the field, and this bald eagle's like swooping down. At one point, they were both standing in the field, kind of just looking at each other.
Get out.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. And then the turkey ended up just dead sprint into the woods. The eagle took one more swoop at him, missed him.
Wow.
That was something. I've never seen that before. I didn't know who I was rooting for, because I was like, I want to see him kind of get it. But at the same time, like, I want to kill that bird in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
What do you do there? But it was pretty cool.
That's cool, man. Dude, you might never see that again, ever.
I know, probably not.
That's what I love about being in the woods. And that's why I think we're so passionate about getting others into the outdoors, because there's so many things that we'll see that people just will never, ever see.
So cool.
That's cool, man. Well, I'm excited for the turkey hunt. It's coming up quick next week already, right? Next weekend.
Yep.
Next weekend. Yep. So I'll be flying out to PA, and hopefully we'll have some good weather.
Yep. Hopefully, but either way, we'll be out.
Cool. I don't have any crazy updates. Let's see. Turkey season for me up here starts April 22nd and runs to like May 14th. So I have my schedule is going to be crazy this year. So I'll probably get out like 3 or 4 times, and I found some turkeys. I don't know. I know you guys are from Texas, so we'll talk a little bit about that. But I actually found turkeys on public land in North Texas.
All right.
Awesome.
So I know where they're at, and I'm going back after them. So I don't even know what kind of pressure is in that area. I have no idea what I'm gonna be running into, but we'll see.
Yeah, get in there.
Well, let's jump into these guys. So first I'm going to introduce Tyler Jones. So Tyler, raise your hand, man, so everybody knows who you are.
Right here.
He is. All right. So Tyler Jones. It's funny. I'm going to read this bio. I normally wouldn't read the entire bio, but I feel compelled because these are 2 of the best bios I've ever heard in my entire life. I'm going to read the bios for you guys. All right. So Tyler's a former standout safety at SMU and lead singer of Tyler and the Tribe. He may not say it often, but he's a family man. This family man is a champ at everything he does. That includes hunting trophy whitetails. With a wall full of Pope and Young class bucks, he's a man who has accomplished a lot and says little about it. Tyler is a guy who brags on his kids and wife brags on his kids and wife long before he tells you about how many mature bucks he has arrowed. A Christ follower and creative thinker, Tyler is developing his newest endeavor, the Element Lifestyle brand, which I can't wait to ask you about. So Tyler, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, man. Casey's a good rider.
All right, KC. So Caleb Clark Smith is your full name. So Casey,
that is
welcome
correct.
to the show, man.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Casey Smith is everyone's friend. I love that.
I love that.
Passionate outdoorsman, conservationist, husband, and Christian. His eyes light up with youthful exuberance and zeal when the conversation turns to nature. It's the best line I've heard. From the lightly traversed deer trail in the deep woods to the subtle signs that a friend has had a rough day, Casey is possibly the most observant person you could meet. Casey operates a construction company and is the youth minister at Point Church of Christ. His quick mind, assertive reactions, and decades of experience hunting and working in the outdoors make him a great hunter and fisherman. Thanks, Casey. Thanks, Tyler. Tyler.
Yeah.
The thing is Tyler wrote mine first and showed it to me, so then I had to write a really good for him too.
I know for a fact that the next time someone asks me for a bio, I'm coming to one of you guys. And you guys don't even know me, but I know it'll be something ridiculous. So I'm gonna hit you.
Oh man! Well, thank you guys for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Hey, dude, we're glad to be here, and
I feel like
glad that y'all are new friends of ours, man.
I know.
For sure.
I'm glad I've only met a few people in Texas so far, so I'm glad that I've got some new friends in Texas. And you guys aren't that far, so where do you guys live?
We live, I guess, around Emory, Texas, which is near Lake Fork. So
Okay.
I live in a little bitty town outside of Emory called Alba, but we're kind of just in the northeast corner of Texas. And for people that don't know, it's kind of halfway between Tyler and Dallas.
Okay, so is that near the Piney Woods?
Close, but
Yeah.
not quite.
Not quite. I just purchased a little bitty piece of property that has pine trees on it, but we don't have a lot of pine trees around. So we're kind of like right on that line. If you were to drive 20 miles east of here, there'd be pines around.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I'm glad to have some Texas folks that I can talk to. Now. I've got some friends, but nobody really around here so much. Like we've got a friend down in like Austin area that does some filming and stuff, and I've met some really, really cool people. But it's good to have you guys on. So let's jump right in, man. So tell us, you guys have a podcast also called the Element Podcast. So tell us a little bit about the Element Podcast. How did that get started? Just tell us about that.
Well, I'll let Tyler take off with that because
Sure.
it's his brainchild.
Well, I came up with this idea. I started listening to podcasts several years ago and thought, man, my perspective, and there wasn't a whole lot of hunting podcasts at the time. And I just felt like my perspective was just so much different than a lot of the podcasts that I've heard. And so, man, I thought for almost 18 months, I had thought about it. Like I wanted to do this the correct way. I didn't want to start it and just look back and go, man, I was just so dumb when I started doing this, So anyway, which I still do it. I still do that now, unfortunately. But so I just kind of sat on it for forever and kind of developed some ideas, some thoughts. And I was like, man, I could use a kind of co-host which is a traditional format for this thing. And anyway, we had talked about it earlier, but when I finally had met KC and we got to become friends a little bit through fishing, I knew that this guy could talk with me. And we decided that we might as well just put some mics in front of us and developed it. We did a couple of test runs.
What you didn't tell me were test runs. I was being real serious about them.
I'm glad they were, looking back. But that, I'd always done film and stuff like that. And so it was kind of just another outdoor media to kind of help build a brand, which has been a dream of mine for a long time now. So.
That's awesome.
You guys have had a couple hundred episodes, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Like we just released 110.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So a little
It's
bit
a
over
weekly, we miss a couple of weeks a year maybe, but it's a weekly. Yeah. And we've actually, you're probably right though. We do a mini series along with the weekly episode during the fall that we're probably getting close to
Yeah,
close to 200
probably is over
episodes.
200 when you add that in, because that's 3 months for 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that
Getting
mark.
close, yep.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we're glad to have some fellow podcasters on. So
Cool. Yeah. I think it's interesting when you do talk to fellow podcasters, because we understand that dead air is a bad thing, and not everybody understands that, right? If you get like a biologist on or something, they'll just sit there and give you no answers.
And then you have the problem that we have, like we probably won't be able to shut up.
That's
So
right.
we'll have a 4-hour podcast that people listen to 15 minutes of.
That's right.
No, we're excited. So tell Tyler, tell us a little bit about the Element brand. What is that you're trying to create there?
Sure. Yeah. It's just a lot of brands right now that are popping up. It's a lifestyle brand. It's Casey and I both grew up in East Texas, and so a lot of people think of Texas hunting. They think of the brush country and that kind of thing. South Texas, and I mean, we're literally farther from that hunting than we are hunting in the Midwest. Kansas and some northern Missouri even. So it's just not. We're different. We're more like the South than we are the Southwest where we're at, and so just kind of just had this idea that I would just I've always liked taking still imagery. I've been, like I said, I've been a film guy for a long time, and just kind of thought that I would pull those aspects together with podcasting, and just hope that I could build a little bit of notoriety enough so that I could stay involved in hunting a little more than somebody who might work a 9-to-5 and be kind of stuck in that grind a little bit. And which the more I see this side of things and that side of things every day, I guess the older I get, the more I look at a 9-to-5 as like something that's not a terrible thing. You know what I mean? Like I've kind of looked at it as I didn't ever want to have that, and I still don't. But I have friends that are in that grind, and I know why. I see the security, and in the end, it's a little bit selfish to kind of chase a dream. You know what I mean? So anyway, but yeah, it's just it's a lifestyle brand. It's hunting and fishing on YouTube, and mostly hunting, but a little bit of fishing on the podcast. So
yeah, nice.
Cool.
How,
go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how did you guys get into filming? That's been a passion of Corey and I's for some time now, and now I'm always curious to see how you got into that. Your guys' videos are pretty high quality. I was watching a bunch of it today.
Thanks.
We'll talk about some of that later, but obviously you guys have some background in it. You didn't just pick up a camera yesterday, so just kind of hear your story with that and with that.
sure.
Yeah. Well, I'll go first since my answer's short. Tyler is how I got into filming. We were talking about before we got on, like there's always like these throwbacks or whatever that you kind of have that you started out filming or whatever. Well, I was a senior in high school. I filmed the first buck I ever shot with a bow, and my mom was in the stand with me, and it was all shaky, and I freaked out, and it was just a basket rack, like a really nice buck. I was excited about, but besides that, that's the only filming I ever really did until Tyler came along and showed me my next addiction pretty much. So
yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's something that I guess when I say this a lot, so I feel like a broken record, but when I was 13, the only thing I wanted for Christmas was a Sony Handycam, and that's what I asked my parents for, and that was about the only thing I got, because they were pretty expensive at the time, and so they got me this kind of consumer Sony Handycam, and I started videoing with that. And my dad's run a fishing lodge out on Lake Fork for over 25 years now, and so during the off season, which is the winter when nobody wants to fish, we spent a lot of time over there, full period, but we could go wherever we wanted in the lodge, and we made a lot of James Bond videos. We made several Godzilla videos where the camera would like fall over and it would look like the house flipped up on its side, just stuff like that. And so that's kind of where I got my start. And then naturally, as a guy who hunted and fished quite a bit, or a kid at that time, I just videoed ducks on the water out in front of the lodge there, and that kind of thing. And so I guess it was about I don't know, in college, I started to get a little more serious about it. Had a buddy from locally here that we got serious for a while. He kind of started to fizzle out a little bit, and I started to kind of rebuild another business that eventually, a few years later, kind of filtered or fizzed out as well. But it was a more high quality kind of video thing, and since then, met KC and was able to kind of like, I didn't have like a huge gap in that from the previous project to this one. And we just continued. I mean, I've been a wedding videographer since about 2014 or 15. And so like I get a ton of practice editing, and shooting, especially in run and gun situations, because that's what a wedding is. And, anyway, that's kind of where I guess I got my chops from mainly, but I also earned money to just get better gear, so that I can capture these experiences better and show people the fullness of creation,
Yep.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's my wife's a wedding photographer, so.
Cool.
Yeah.
But that's different ball game, man.
Oh yeah.
Filming a wedding too, and what goes into that. But
I've noticed there's not a lot of women wedding videographers, and I think it's because there's just so much gear. It's cumbersome. It's heavy. My back hurts really bad after every one, and that's just kind of, so it kind of gives me an advantage just being a little bit of a stronger human being than some others, so.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, thanks for sharing. So you guys, I just listened to your podcast you just put up on, I believe it was the 4th, about your week. Was it last week you guys were turkey hunting?
Yeah.
Last weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So I really enjoyed that, because I felt like Dave and I, like some of the stuff I really could relate to, because Dave and I are by no means expert turkey hunters. We're still kind of learning the ropes too. We've got a lot of turkeys on this farm in Pennsylvania, and we haven't killed a ton of them, but just listening to you guys talk about it, I was like, man, I could totally put myself right there and be in like that same role. And then you guys finally got it done. So tell us about that experience a little bit, because I love talking turkey. Obviously, this is the time of the year for it. And the one thing I loved that too, and I know you guys will talk about, but the one thing I loved about it was that I'm a big bow hunter, just like Dave is, and you guys are bow hunters too. But I told Dave at the beginning of this year, like, I've been trying not to pick up a gun. Like, I want to kill one with the bow so bad. And this year I was like, dude, I'm not bringing the bow out of the case. Like, I'm taking the gun everywhere I go, and I'm going to kill a turkey.
Yeah. So that was like an awesome experience, especially for me, because Tyler's killed a few more turkeys than I have, but we had success together turkey hunting. So it was really cool. And, it was a friend of a friend who got us permission on this place, and beautiful place, man. Awesome. Just
Brazos River Village,
just so good, and just the guy never turkey hunts. He loves to deer hunt and everything on that place, but they don't turkey hunt. So we had it all to ourselves for opening weekend of turkey season, and of course, just like every opening weekend, a cold front blows in, the wind blows like crazy.
Except for opening a deer.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the inverse of that, it's a warm front. But anyways, it started out a little bit rocky, with weather and all, but it just ended up just fell into place, man. It was so beautiful, and especially when we stayed the extra day and drove back Sunday afternoon, so we got to hunt Sunday morning, and kind of that front had fallen out, and it was so still and calm, and you could hear gobbles echoing, just down the riverbed, and it was just so cool. And I think you're right. You touched on something that we'll probably include a good bit of in the film when we released it. But like, being archery hunters, you would think that it would be kind of repulsive to have to use a gun, but it's kind of the opposite for me. It is so cool to just finalize and it's over, and there's none of this tracking and having to like have that anxiety about, did you get it? How was the shot? It's just like, boom, it's over, and it's time to celebrate and be, brothers together out there. And I think that was the other cool part for me, because, well, just in general, us started hunting together. I'd never really hunted with anybody in the stand with me. I'm kind of a solo kind of guy. I'm only child, and it's just kind of the way things go. But like, especially with turkey hunting, even more than deer hunting, it's just like, did you just see that, man? How cool is that? Hugs everywhere and stuff. So it was cool, man. It was a good time. And Tyler selflessly didn't mind being more the cameraman on this trip, since I haven't really ever got to hunt turkeys very much, and he's probably better behind the, or not probably, he is better behind the camera than I am. So, and luckily for me, he enjoys that aspect of it too. So it kind of worked out well for both of us. We both ended up killing birds, and both did the thing on camera, but fun times. I mean, do you have anything else about it?
I mean, it was. We did the public land grind like 2 years ago that you're about to step into some, and it was tough. Maybe you're probably a better hunter than we are, so hopefully you'll have some success. But it was nice to step out. Like literally, when we stepped out of the truck, when we got to the he got a little metal ranch house there, and when we stepped out of the truck, I mean, we didn't walk 15 steps, and KC locks up, and they're like, you can see from this overlook where the ranch house is, like there are 2 turkeys down in this bottom,
Oh.
And so we were at that point, we're like high fiving, It's like,
It was easy.
it's gonna be good, And so, and I happen to know a biologist really well that I grew up with, played baseball with, that worked that Graham area for a while, and I mean, they're thick there, so we kind of had an idea going into it. We really expected success, honestly.
Yeah.
And that's a nice change, because we do a lot of public land hunting, and if you expect success on public land, it's going to be, you're going to not meet your expectations. So it was kind of nice to, I don't know what's the analogy here, but like when you've been like, I don't know, you know how after the parade goes through town, there's a bunch of leftover candy in the ditch and it's kind of nasty? when you've been after that leftover candy for so long, it's nice to just go to the candy store and get some. That's kind of what this was like.
Good, man. Yeah, the other thing too, you guys were talking about, I don't know which one of you said something like, look, like if a Jake, I think one of you guys missed a Jake, right?
Yeah.
Anyway,
One
like,
came in kind of far and I shot it.
Like, I'm not waiting for a gobbler. And that's 100% my mindset in Texas right now. Like in Pennsylvania, there's a bunch of slobs running around. I probably wouldn't shoot a Jake there just because I know what's there. But here, just learning new areas, I'm shooting a Jake if I see one. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
That's
how we felt.
Yeah, you should, man, and be proud of it.
Yeah,
that'd be awesome.
Sure. Yeah, turkey
for sure.
Turkey. So another question, turkey related for you guys. I've listened to some of your podcasts talking about deer hunting. You guys kind of have a unique approach on certain things when it comes to deer hunting. And some of the things I was listening, I was like, man, that's interesting. I think that, like, it makes sense, and I just never really thought of it. Just curious what your approach is for turkey hunting. Obviously you're bow hunting, at times, so it's a little bit different with that, but what do you have anything that you do a little different when it comes to turkey hunting, that you maybe want to share?
I mean, we don't consume just a ton of turkey media, I don't think. So, I would say that, we don't know what in the world we're doing when we're calling. I mean, like we literally, I don't think, after the first morning, which is another story in itself, we didn't take a call with us. I don't think. It was just like, we just called them with our mouths, like
that's crazy.
I thought it was hilarious that like 2 grown men are sitting there making the highest pitches voices that humans can make, in the woods. So but we were doing that with our mouths, and I mean, I just think when you're in a good turkey hunting spot, from my experience, and you throw a Yelp out there with 5 or 6 notes in it, and you got a decoy sitting out there, I mean, if they're fired up pretty good, you can't do it wrong, hardly.
Yeah.
And that's fun, though. I mean,
it was awesome.
I'm not trying to say it's not challenging or anything. There are challenges.
Oh, for sure.
But, yeah, it's fun. I mean, I don't know. Is there anything else you can think of?
So the whole premise of this whole trip was that I haven't turkey hunted a lot in my life.
Yeah.
And I've never shot a turkey before this season the way, like, Night and Hell shoot turkeys, right? I've always, like, jump shot them or been driving on a road with a four-wheeler and, hey, a turkey, and been happy to do it, right?
Yeah.
But so I think that this is going to be the only tactic I can give turkey-related because it worked, and I'm not saying it would always work anywhere.
Sure.
But I think that being a deer hunter primarily helped me, at least, and probably Tyler too, with the turkeys, because I think from what I see on TV or YouTube videos or whatever, dudes are always running and gunning, running everywhere, trying to head off the turkeys. And literally, we hunted them like deer. We set our decoy out and set up and sat there for 4 or 5 hours and killed a couple birds. And I think that like that patience really paid off because
we had to find like a well-trafficked area.
Yeah, it's kind of like finding the hub, pretty much. I mean, literally, we didn't have success the first morning. Bad weather. We made a big loop through the place and kind of gathered info, found some tracks and some roostings and stuff like that, and kind of took the MRI, most recent info, and then kind of put it to work and went out there that afternoon and had success.
Yeah.
So that's all I got, really, tactic-wise.
That's great. Actually, we're very similar, actually.
Cool.
Like, I remember last year, dude, we sat in that blind and it was Pennsylvania, the first half of the season you can only hunt till noon, and then the second half you can hunt all day. So we had limited time. We had a huge Barnett blind. Is it Barnett?
Baronet.
Baronet blind. They make these huge blinds anyway. So we're in this blind, and it was bad weather. But we, like you guys, you have limited time too, right? So we're going to hunt anyway. And turkeys come out in the rain in the fields and stuff. But it wasn't just rain. I mean, it was like torrential downpour. And I'm saying like 40 mile an hour gusts, 50 mile an hour gusts at times. And we're in this blind, and this blind's shaking. I mean, the water's coming in. Dude, we're sitting there laughing, and it was like, I don't know, 10 or 11 in the morning. I look over, there's a gobbler like 80 yards out in the middle of the field just hanging out. And we never got him to come in, and we never killed him. But a lot of times we do sit out there and we're in a blind. Like, we hardly ever run. As a matter of fact, I can't even think of any time we really run and gun. This year we probably will at the farm because we actually just want to do it because it's something different.
Sure.
Sitting in a blind.
I think that you guys made a great point too, that with the calling, not over calling. I think a lot of guys do that. Call and call and call. When you call one time and you get a response, like, they know where you're at and they're gonna come in or they're not. You keep calling and calling, eventually they're just going to want you to go to them, and then that's when they'll get hung up, and then you either try to move, and then you can run into problems. So I think limit your calling, I think is a great strategy that we put into place as well.
Sure. Yeah, and I think that happened for us because that afternoon we actually showed up and really soft bumped some turkeys. Like, one hen kind of got weird that we saw kind of up on this hillside, but there were two gobs with them, and we just gave a series of yelps or whatever, and just let him know we were there. And that gobbler kind of worked his way down, and then he went off with those hens. And I think that was the first gobbler I shot. I think 45 minutes later he came back to check out the calling, and I don't know, but that's just kind of my assumption. So
I mean, they definitely do that. They'll identify that there was something there, and then they'll kind of do whatever they were going to do, and then they'll circle back and just to check to see if it was still there. Then obviously, if you have a decoy out in the field, the story to him makes sense at that point.
Yeah, I mean, we've had way much. I mean, I shouldn't say we have a ton of luck, but I mean, like the first year we took out the youth, we had a ton of birds gobbling, and he didn't shoot the bird until, I don't know what time it was, 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning. So they do take time. Sometimes I think it's like, if you watch a lot of TV, you get this impression that, they just fly off the roost and you shoot them. I think most of the time they fly off the roost and they're with hens right away. So they will come back, definitely come back.
Yeah.
Yeah, that happened to us, I think, on day 2, something similar. The kind of thing, like, I think that, and this is all just observations as a newbie turkey hunter, right? But like, I think that the idea of having to be right on the birds at first light is kind of it was overrated for us that weekend, at least. I don't know if but that might just kind of be part of the fun of it too. Just right there and off the trees. That'd be kind of cool.
You mentioned like not watching a ton of turkey hunting and stuff on TV. I actually like that though, because I feel like you can get in your own head if you watch too much YouTube and you watch too many hunting shows.
Oh yeah,
and it's a lot of it isn't like that. And so by you guys being out there just learning by experience, it may take you a little bit longer, but you'll learn your own way to hunt. You'll learn your own things about turkeys and the real things that happen about turkeys.
Yeah,
because we've made that mistake too, where we've taken advice from people, and I mean, we'd spent a whole season one time taking advice from somebody, and it just wasn't working for us.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man.
I think that's across the board too. That's not just in the turkey space, like I can remember a time in our hunting and scouting when we were really locked into buck beds because that's like the hot topic, and man, I'm gonna tell you, there ain't a lot of buck beds to be found in East Texas. That's just not kind of how it works. You have to. That's a tactic, and I think a lot of people use it as like a means to an end, but it's just a tactic that works in some places, and that's kind of how a lot of this. You have these localized experts, and I'm not dogging anybody. Don't think of it that way, But like, I'm just trying to maybe help people who think some people are like great at this, and then they are great at where they're at. But like you can find a buck bed in southern Iowa, right? And we've been there. You can find them, and it's a great place to hunt. I can't wait till I get to, but like that's not how it is everywhere. And along with that goes, satisfaction. Like this year, I shot a spike on Texas public land, and I was just stoked. This is the first buck I've shot on public land, and it was like. And other places, it'd be like, yeah, I'm passing that deer, But like it's not, and it's not about the size of the animal or whatever, you got to be relative to where you're at.
For sure. Yep. For sure. Yeah. I think
you guys do a lot of public land hunting?
Yeah, quite a bit. Yeah.
In Kansas and Iowa, all out Midwest? Like
deer? Yeah. Texas, as well. It's we're gonna hunt wherever we know where some big deer are, some big mature deer. I mean, sure. if that's a public piece or if that's a permission piece or whatever. I mean, like last year we hunted one of the first days of the rut, of our rut hunt in Kansas last year. We hunted a public spot, and all the deer moved through it down to some private. And at midday, we got permission to hunt that private. We were juiced about it. And went back in there in the afternoon and almost killed the deer that KC he had a miss, a deflection, and we almost killed it that afternoon as well on private. And we would have been just as pumped up as if it was on public, And so it's not like it doesn't really matter a whole lot to us. I think a lot of guys are really hyped up on the public land game right now, but we're really just chasing a good experience, really,
Yeah, for sure.
Ditto.
For sure. I think, Casey, you made a really good point about, not taking what someone says or what you see as just like gospel, like, hey, like if I do this, it's going to work for me. Because a lot of times someone, like you talk about buck beds, a lot of times someone that says, oh, you have to hunt a buck bed if you want to kill a buck. Well, they probably been doing the same thing for 30 years. They probably do 10 other things in addition to that they're not telling you about. Picking one thing, and then you're just looking at that one thing and saying, if I do this, then I'm going to have success, and you don't, and you wonder why. But they didn't tell you the 10 other things that they were doing or the 30 years of experience knowing how to hunt that specific thing. So I think you made a really good point with that.
Thanks.
When they found the buck bed.
Right.
Yeah.
They found the buck bed in June.
Right.
Yeah.
They didn't tell you that part. And then some poor kid goes out and he finds a buck bed in like October.
Yeah. I think that I've seen it. I was telling KC about this the other day. I see it locally even. I mean, we're trying to catch crappie this time of year just to get some good food. You know what I mean? Like we just love eating crappie fillets. So I rely on a buddy that gets report from everybody. He talks to people at the bank all the time. So, but I can get a report and I can know exactly where they're biting, and I just can't catch them. And I'm like, what is the deal? And it's like Dave was saying, they just don't tell you every detail. It's not necessarily because they're hiding it all the time, but they don't think about it. It just seems like, oh, well, here's the big key factor. I'll just tell you this and you'll go catch them. But it's not always that way. You got to do it just like them sometimes. And as individuals, we can't quite reproduce what somebody else is doing sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's, I don't know, you're going to be a better hunter and better person for it if you don't take shortcuts, right? And that's kind of more – and now we're venturing over into things I'm going to use in youth class, but like whenever you take shortcuts to get places, you don't gain that strength. It's kind of like the old steroids in sports kind of thing, right? Like, you're going to get quick gains, but your joints aren't going to be able to take it. Whereas if you do the hard work and put it in, you're going to be stronger for it, and you're going to last longer and be able to do your job better or whatever it might be you're doing.
For sure.
That just went real wide. I'm sorry.
No, it's true. I mean, that's knowledge that is has longevity, right? That knowledge you can use then forever, rather than just trying to find the next quickest thing every single year to try and kill a big deer.
Yeah,
you have to use like the knowledge that you have and the experiences that you have, and obviously you can learn from other people too, but you have to kind of mesh it in with what you've learned and the experiences you have, or else it's kind of useless at
Sure.
that point.
I think too, like, which is a pretty common thing people talk about all the time, is like, with the one thing we love about hunting, it's frustrating, but you make a lot of mistakes, but like through those mistakes, if you don't sit down and go, now, like, why did that happen? Did we push in too soon on that area, or like, did we play the wrong wind? Like, that's, I think, the fun part about it too, because you're like, it's these little tidbits that you get better at every single year that add up to eventually killing a big deer at some point.
Yeah. Those are the fun / agonizing things about it, right?
Yep, for sure. Yeah, and it's a lot of. I mean, hunting is just having the right attitude too. I mean, there's too many guys that just beat themselves up by making mistakes, and like, just learn from it and enjoy being out there. And dude, it's hunting. Like,
yeah, exactly, man. If you're not having a good time, you need to reevaluate, what you're doing. Now, I understand. Don't get me wrong. I get pretty stressed out and worked up about, not, getting the big buck or whatever when you're close. But, at the end of the day, if you can't go back to camp and reflect with your buddy about how awesome that was, just in the fact that God put you there in that moment to experience that, then you need to do a little reevaluation. Like, I had an epic stalk on a deer, like, where there are no trees, this year up in the Midwest, and spotted him from 400 yards away, met a huge 1 mile loop all the way around to come into 16 or 18 yards, and got, like, he had no idea I was in the world, man.
Wow.
And I was pushing in, and then I didn't even spook this thing, but a meadowlark just happened to fly up at this, like, right beside me. Didn't know I was there. It flew like right at me, and that made that buck turn his head around, and then I was in his peripherals. The game was over. And it's just like, what do you do, right? Like, I was so frustrated in the moment, but you look back at it, you look at the footage, and you're like, man, this is awesome. Like, how many people get to be 16 yards from a giant Midwest buck on the ground, and just kind of see him in his natural habitat. So I don't know. I think that there's always, like, that bigger picture that you can look at and see to take enjoyment from.
Yeah, for sure.
100%.
I think if we could switch gears, well, not switch gears really. It's kind of just goes along with kind of where we're heading with this conversation. But we talked a little bit before we jumped on the podcast, and I think we have a lot in common. I think one of the things we have in common, obviously, is our love of Christ and our relationship with the Lord, and being able to share share our experiences, and then also share the gospel through those experiences in the outdoors. I mean, there's no better place I'd rather be to be close to the Lord than in a tree stand and watching the sun come up or watching the sunset, and just experiencing that. Just nothing like it. And so, we talk about being rooted in your faith, your family, your values, your tradition. That's the 4 things we talk about a lot. Faith being the most important, obviously, but I'd love to chat with you guys a little bit and just see how how you view that piece, and how that is your foundation also, for everything you guys do.
Sure.
I'll start.
Sure. Okay. I'll start. I get pretty passionate about this, by the way. So if you don't mind, I'll just try to give you a synopsis of my testimony, and not be too long about it. But I was a good high school student, and was privileged enough to get a partial academic scholarship to Texas A&M, and I went down there completely unprepared for the world, and ended up getting caught up in the college party scene and everything, and lasted about 1.5 years at school, and got kicked out, and really was lost spiritually. I didn't really know what my purpose was in life, and didn't know what I was supposed to do. I had this big plan of getting this great 4-year degree and going off and just studying critters for the rest of my life, and somebody paying me for it, and it just didn't happen. So somehow, some way, while I was down there, I ended up working odds and end jobs or whatever, and kind of got plugged into a church and took a youth class like on a whim, just like they had like enrichment classes or whatever, and I was like, oh, well, I'll try this, whatever. And kind of made friends with the youth minister and then left and didn't think anything else about it. Went off and worked in West Texas chasing animals, doing game capture stuff. And one day the youth minister down there calls me up and says, hey, I'd like you to come be a youth intern for us this summer. And I'm like, oh, yeah, cool. And at the same time, I'm like living a completely opposite life of that, kind of just wild and crazy, running around with single guys. And I decided that I was going to do that. And I left, and it kind of turned my life around. And it's so cool to see how God can pursue you through stuff like that. And even whenever you're not really seeking him, he's always seeking you. And that's the cool thing, man. Like, I know you, like y'all's brand is Rooted Outdoors. And it's interesting how when like you let some of your roots slip up, God will grab them and pull them back down, but that's just a quick version, I guess. So now fast forward, I am the part-time youth minister at a local church here, and I really feel like it's and it's kind of like how y'all talked earlier, like there's something God has placed my passion for the outdoors in me. It's not a temptation. Like God, I don't feel that way. I feel that God has given me this passion for the outdoors, and I need to find a way to use that for him, right? So I try to do that through my youth ministry. Now, I understand not everybody's going to be an outdoorsman, and that's okay, but I feel like I have been gifted by the Lord an ability to explain things and talk in lessons and have a good way of conveying my love for the outdoors to kids and showing God through his creation. And in fact, right now we're studying the creation story in Genesis in class, so this is like really heavily on my mind. But I feel like that's how it sounds so broad, but like that's how my faith works for me, right? Like it's not just that all about God's creation. The big thing is that he is, like, from day one, from the day that sin entered the world, like he had this plan to send Jesus to save us, right? But like the whole thing, like man's first job was to give the animals names, right? Like that was, so to me, that means that like we have this really intrinsic relationship with animals, with nature, with the outdoors, and it would be a disservice to God and the spiritual gifts that I have to not use that in some way to portray the love of Christ to others. I hope that all made sense. I'm very sorry if it was very, very here and there and everywhere.
No, it was great. That was
yeah,
awesome.
That's just kind of how I feel about it. Like that's where I'm rooted, man. Is the love of the outdoors and the passion to kind of show that stuff to the younger generations.
I love the disservice piece, that piece that you mentioned, because I feel like for a long time, even when I first got married, and I've been married since 2010, and I felt like in the beginning I had a really tough time, newly married, I want to be in a tree stand, there's that connection that you have that you kind of need. It recharges the batteries. Like that's just, for me, that's how it is. And I just had to get really clear on like how important that was to me. And like you said, I feel like I was doing a disservice if I wasn't, when I met Dave and stuff, like doing a disservice if we didn't do something with Rooted. And literally the first thing we did was just like, hey, let's design a logo. Like we had no idea what this thing was going to be about.
That's cool.
And then, we had the first, well, we did like the second youth turkey hunt, and this young guy that we found, well, we didn't find him. God found him for us. We actually were stumped that nobody wanted this free turkey hunt. Like we were just thinking, we just weren't thinking right about it.
Mm-hmm.
And his mom was going through cancer at the time, and she was terminal, and I don't think he knew it at that time, actually. She ended up passing away a couple weeks after the turkey hunt, but like we were able to give this kid like 2 days. We filmed the hunt. We gave him a 30-minute film, that he can have for the rest of his life, of this time in his life. After that, man, we looked at each other and we talked about it, and we're like, man, this is why we're supposed to do this.
That's awesome.
I don't know what else God's going to lead us to do with this. This is why we had this conversation at the back of your truck one day. about Rooted Outdoors and how this thing formed. And from that point on, we're like, we don't need to know we don't need to know anything. We're just going to follow what happens and pray about it. And that's, I'm kind of going off to a little bit.
That's great, man. That's such an awesome story too. Yeah. And it's so cool how I'm such the kind of person who wants a plan laid out, and I want to kind of nip it all in the bud, right? Like take care of all the loose ends or whatever. And I think one of my big struggles, well, there's a lot of them, but one of them is like not letting the Holy Spirit work, right? And trying to do it your way. I think that's just kind of my independent nature. And sometimes it's good to do the way you did, where y'all start your logo and like, okay, let's just put this in God's hands and let it go where it's going to go. That's awesome.
Yeah. Tyler, I'd love to hear from you as well. Kind of, if you want to share some of your story, you can, or just kind of how you also tie like your faith into your passion for the outdoors.
Sure. Yeah, my story's not probably quite as interesting. Like the way I think about it is not that way, I don't guess. That's like way over my head probably, the way KC is thinking about it. But for me, like I said, my story's kind of boring. I grew up, I was raised up in the church with my parents and everything, and I don't feel like I ever I guess you could say strayed. I'm always been really straightforward, straight lace, about things, real black and white. And, so like, there's no like, good testimony of me, like leaving, just turning my back on God or anything like that. It's just, there have been times when, I definitely felt like, way more distant than I would have liked, for instance, college is a low point in a lot of people's lives. And, I played football, and, I can remember our first coaches my actual position coach was one of the worst humans I think I've ever met. And, he was just dog cussing nonstop, and just, terrible attitude, spit in your face kind of guy, and, anyway, just the whole coaching staff, a lot of them were like that. And so, I can remember like in my second year, what would be my sophomore, academically, what would be that year. I can remember, I had moved into like an apartment style dorm. And, I can remember just praying hard every night, especially that, just for strength, and that I could kind of let stuff roll off my back with these coaches and stuff. I like to please people. I like to do the right thing, and I like to do a good job at it. And so just, praying for those things, I can remember that I stayed pretty steadfast in that for a while. And then, I don't know when, but I just kind of stopped. Being so desperate for that, and nothing changed. And I just, probably didn't have the patience that I needed at the time. And, I can just remember for a lot of, the remainder of my college, just not really quite being like as close as I should have been to God probably. And I think we can probably say that every day, like I should be closer, right? But definitely at that time was distant. And, kind of fast forward a little bit, I get out of college, I start touring in a band, and still straight. I never had a taste of alcohol till I was 22 years old, so, I try to do the right thing. I hate being in trouble. So yeah, I toured in a band, definitely feel stronger in the last, like 6 months than I have maybe ever in my life. But I don't have like this big concept of, I think like KC has, which is really cool. It's just more like, I don't know, just for some reason in my mind, I separate, kind of the way I think about, my relationship with God. I separate it from the element a little bit. I don't know if it's just because I stay so busy with the element that I don't, it's not that, like I do feel like that I want to, have a discussion similar to what we're maybe doing right now with somebody who may be an unbeliever or something like that, and it's not that I don't want to be a good influence. I mean, those are things that I do want, but I just don't know how to tie it in. You know what I mean? Like, I just know that I'm just going to, Casey and I are going to be the same person here on this podcast or on our podcast or on this video or whatever, as you would see at, the late night after party at the QDMA banquet or something like that, or the convention. I mean, we're the same people. We are going to talk the same, speak the same towards each other and others and the stories we tell. And so, like, I think you're going to get that consistency and that steadfastness with us, and hopefully that allows people to kind of see something different and get inquisitive. And I like having deep conversations. I mean, I'm not much at all for small talk. And so I just like KC is just really good at keeping a conversation going where I would get real awkward quick because I just can't, I just want to talk about deep stuff. I just have always done that since I was a high schooler. And so anyway, yeah, it's just, it's something I enjoy doing and I'm quick to do. So I think, like, hopefully I'll just have that opportunity more and more. And I think the hunting community, not to sound judgmental, could use some of that, I think,
For sure.
Yeah, for sure.
So you like campfires?
I love them, dude. We did one of my favorite podcasts. We did a campfire in Colorado after one of our buddies had shot an elk at elk camp, so it was awesome.
That was sick.
Yeah,
There's like, you can hear the fire crackling in the background, and it's just,
man.
and that was a kind of a similar situation to where, us and y'all are talking, except those guys have been pretty lifelong friends of mine. So but the same situation, they're believers, and it's cool how you can feel a little bit more comfortable around, letting your guard down and showing your heart to other guys who are believers. You know what I mean? And that's part of the reason why I'm appreciative that we're on this podcast with y'all, where it's a good opportunity for us to have this conversation, because if it's not this kind of dialogue, it's kind of hard for us to do it on our own podcast by ourselves. It's we always kind of like what Tyler's saying, try to make sure that we just be who we are, and whenever we're moved to talk about something, we do. But at the same time, I don't know, it's just different, man. It's different. It's good. It's good, different.
For sure. When we decided to kind of relaunch the podcast, we had many discussions about it, because you can take it so many different ways. Like, we're like, well, we want to have great hunters on that can share awesome information and educate the people that are listening. But we also, on the other hand, we want to have conversations like this, because like Tyler, like you said, I don't think it just doesn't happen enough. It doesn't. And I think if you can have a good mix and you can have, guests on that aren't feeling pressured to have that conversation, but then every now and then we do have these conversations, I think that really helps. And I don't know, man. I mean, I feel like we just, and honestly, for a while, we didn't even talk about the podcast. And then one day I'm like, dude, I feel like we should relaunch this podcast. I really like doing it, but let's talk about what we're going to do this time, and not just invite a bunch of people on and talk.
Yeah. It's weird how, man, in big hunting films and stuff that you'll see these days, and on podcasts and stuff, guys talk about how spiritual hunting is, but they don't quite, I don't think they quite grasp some of them the actual spirituality of it, and they understand that there's this spiritual healing in the outdoors and this kind of thing, but still have failed to kind of grasp what we're talking about, unfortunately, here. And it's just weird that they don't make that connection sometimes. But I mean, I think there's a lot of leaders in our community that are frankly lost, probably, but I think that's just kind of that's the world a little bit, I mean, we're supposed to be a bit of an outcast, I think, so that's just the way it's going to be. But hopefully guys like us will have a little influence at some point and be able to have a good conversation and show somebody who may be struggling that there are way cooler things out there.
I mean, we've been approached by some younger guys and even some older guys too that like have similar struggles, which is why we started talking about this like rooted community. Like, how do you create this like community where it's like this movement of rooted hunters, right? And rooted outdoorsmen or fishermen or whatever that is. I don't know what that looks like, but whatever. We've been talking about it. And the reason is because I think sometimes there's this separation where there's guys that are believers where they're, you know, maybe they're curious about it and they're in church and they're involved in their church, and then they get out with their like friends that are hunters, and those guys aren't, right? Those are the guys that are they're just not living like that, right? So they struggle with that because they don't even know how to have the conversations. And so we've been approached by that. We're like, how do you guys put it together? How do you mesh it together? And so we don't have all the answers, of course, but just talking to different people and creating a community where we support each other.
Yeah. That's a great thing, man.
Well, I mean, I think, I don't mean to keep going on this too long, guys, so cut me off whenever.
No,
but
please.
I think that I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and I've talked to my wife about it. And, you know, you have to, like, I've been looking at this a lot lately in my own life with music and this stuff, but music especially, and it's time investment versus time with family versus time with, and, you know, like you look at, I got a son that's playing baseball right now, and like I'm trying to take him to church more hours per week than he plays baseball, but that's kind of getting hard with our culture, you know. And I just think that you have to look at like some guy who's one of the greatest in the world at whatever he does. Like, man, what are the sacrifices that he has paid? And I'm not just talking about like blood, sweat, and tears, right? So, you know, I think to kind of wrap that into what we're talking about here, there's guys that are really good deer hunters or really knowledgeable about deer hunting, and they end up being the guys that get a lot of attention and drive other guys by inspiration to be a good deer hunter. Well, what does it take to be a good deer hunter? A lot of times it takes time investment and money investment, and you know, that's, you just have to look at it all in one big thing and say, man, like, at what point is this becoming an idol of mine? You know?
Yeah, sure. That makes me think this, again, we keep going, but I think this is good stuff, man. I think it's powerful. So that brings up something that's been on my heart too. And I think it's just like an awareness. So we started going to game dinners and different things like that and hearing speakers. And I oftentimes find myself, or like, I don't know, I'll see a video or something like that. And I'm constantly going to myself, man, I didn't know that guy was a Christian. And it's like a guy that's like a big name in the outdoor industry now. And all I think is like, man, like, how did I not know that? Like, I should have known that. There should have been some way that I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not like, you know, I'm not talking negative about anybody like that, but I feel like there's a way to share it, and why not be who you are? I mean,
Right.
Yeah.
We're supposed to hold each other accountable, man.
Yeah.
I mean,
and they deliver these amazing speeches. Like, we sit there and go, man, that was awesome. Like, his testimony is incredible. I didn't even know the guy was a Christian. So I don't know. I know it's a battle too when they get into TV and stuff that, but still, like, it's no excuse in my opinion.
I agree.
Yeah, you're right. I think that, I mean, what y'all have got going here is great because you kind of free people up a little bit to be able to maybe talk a little bit more about it than what they normally would or do, and that's encouraging, you know. And I think it's maybe it's a great avenue for those people who you're talking about who might maybe through network restrictions or whatever aren't able to, you know, express their true feelings. You know, there's ways to do it, you know. And I think that maybe, like, to touch kind of on something Tyler said a while ago, where like these guys are understanding that this thing that we do is spiritual, but not quite grasping, you know, what that spirit is. Maybe that's a little bit less on them and more on us for not being there to mentor that feeling sometimes, you know, and to be there to cultivate that and to be like, hey, you know, that thing you're feeling, man, I feel it too. And here's where it's rooted, you know, here's where it comes from. And I think that, you know, through cool platforms like this, I think that that's a lot of the good work that we can and should do.
Yeah. So to kind of go hand in hand with that, and now I know we're going to kind of wrap up soon here, but I want to kind of put one or both of you guys on the spot for a second here. So
as if they're not already, right?
Exactly. So there's probably somebody out there listening that is a really good deer hunter, and they've had a ton of success whether it's just deer hunting or maybe it's success in life or whatever it might be. But they just feel like something is missing. Like it's just not enough. Like they've killed whatever, every season they kill a mature deer and it's bigger and bigger every year, but it's just not enough. And I think a lot of guys can relate to that. I know I've been there at certain times in my life. And for me, it wasn't until like I met Jesus that I had peace with whatever happened out there. And I'm sure there's some other people out there that have, like I said, have had success and have done like pretty much from a worldly standpoint, have done everything that other people would see as successful. What would you guys say to that person who's listening right now?
I can go if you want.
If you're ready to go.
I've had some pretty good successes, I will say, in my life. Casey wrote about it in my bio. I've shot some pretty big deer. There are a lot. All of our listeners don't know about all the deer that I've shot. We've talked about a few of them, but I've had that success. I played Division I college football, started, there's not a good humble way to say this, but I should have played in the pros probably. I kind of gave up on it in my last year and was having some success, which is what we're talking about, touring in a band regionally and eventually nationally. And then started my own band after 5 years of that and had success there. I've had a successful marriage for almost a decade now. So I've had some great successes. And after my band broke up in 2015, I went through depression straight up. Didn't know at the time. I couldn't have told you that it was depression. I just did not feel content or happy with anything. I was just kind of an anxious jerk a lot, to people probably. And so, I think just to kind of solidify what you're saying, like you can have a lot of success and do a lot of things and it never will be enough. I can play, one of the highest levels of football and I still wanted more. Tom Brady still wants another Super Bowl, right? He still wants it. And when he retires because he can't do it anymore, he's going to wish that he could go back and play next year and try to win another Super Bowl. You know what I mean? It's just never going to be enough. There's nothing – I have a song about this that I wrote recently where there's a line in it that says, I can look to my wife to help me get through this depression essentially in this period and to help me have an answer. And it's not enough. She's not enough. And that's just the cold hard truth. And I'll be married to her as long as I live, or as long as both of us live, So, I think what you're kind of getting to and what I'm trying to get to is that the only thing that is enough is not of this world, essentially. So.
Yeah. So a quick little break right here. Tyler's releasing has released 3 new songs on his newest album.
Yes.
Called, Bright Side of the Earth by Tyler and the Tribe. Go check that out. I think that song isn't out yet, right?
Yeah, that one's not out quite yet.
Okay.
But I do have Bright Side of the Earth. The title track is out, and that's a song about my wife being the bright side of my earth, essentially. Me wanting to be around her. Now, and so it sounds contradictory. But I think God does give us comforts, and my wife happens to be one of those comforts. And despite many times that we may have had arguing because of things that I was anxious about, I was able to see that there was good in that relationship for sure. So anyway, appreciate the plug, dude.
Yeah, no problem. And I think something that I've learned from Tyler is he's been – for a young guy, he's been married for a long time, and I'm kind of more of a newlywed, not so much anymore. We've been married a little over 2 years, and that's just I'm learning a lot from him about how to be a good husband and like what it takes and how it's not always about like stereotypical husbands, you know. Sometimes
Casey's a
there's
better husband than me.
No,
bro.
don't
I can guarantee you that. I can guarantee you that.
no way. But anyways, yeah. So it's been cool, man. It's been cool to see that from you and stuff. And like this, I edited a podcast the other day and used Bright Side of the Earth for one of some of the music. And another little part about me, I don't ever listen to music anymore, so I'm not a very good friend to Tyler because I don't listen to music. I don't really support him that much, but I listened to that song, and it really was cool. You know, it's when songs become like poetry and they're not just like these little ditties that people move around on a dance floor to. You know, it's a big difference. But anyways, we strayed far from your question. I don't know.
No, that was good.
Question.
That was good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're gonna end it on that note. To be honest with you, I think you know, it's a good way to wrap it up. I appreciate you guys being transparent and just sharing your stories a little bit with us. We get to talk turkey hunting. We didn't get to talk deer hunting, which means we're gonna have to do this again.
You know, I hate deer hunting, so I don't know why we never do that. No, man, that would be awesm.
Yeah,
I'd love to do that.
Yeah.
We'll dive in maybe towards like the end of summer, and we can like talk about all our exciting trips we have coming up in the in fall and stuff. It'd be awesome.
Sounds great.
We'll definitely put all your information obviously in the description of the podcast and all Tyler's, where we can find all Tyler's music. I know he's very humble about it, but I'm excited to jump in and listen to that stuff too. Now that I know the meaning behind the songs too, it helps. Like you said, it's really pretty cool. Dave, what do you got, man? You got anything else?
Yeah, just make sure to check out their turkey film. Do you guys know I know you just did it, so I'm not putting.
We're hoping next week, but I think
Okay.
that's ambitious.
Okay,
We're going to try to get it in the next few weeks. We worked pretty hard on it today.
nice.
I've got a big long rough cut that's like 22 minutes right now. It was an hour and 6 minutes when I first laid everything down. But so yeah, it's
Nice.
quickly getting whittled down, and hopefully we can pull it under 20 minutes.
Okay, nice. Yeah, so be sure to check that out when that comes out. We'll post that up when it comes out.
Awesome. Thanks,
Thanks.
man.
Yeah, check them out on YouTube, and then obviously their podcast.
Your podcast on everything, and it's on iTunes. I think that's how I found it, right?
Yep.
All the major
iTunes,
stuff.
Stitcher, and Podbean.
Nice.
And then what's your YouTube channel? Like, where can we find your hunting stuff?
Probably just search the Element Hunting. I
Okay.
think the URL is maybe youtube.com/the Element
Okay.
podcast.
We'll put it on.
Yeah, we'll drop it in the
We'll
description.
put it on the
Yeah.
description for sure.
Yeah.
Well, guys, it's been a pleasure. It really has been, just to get to know you guys. We love doing this podcast, and I think tonight it's really evident of why God wanted us to relaunch this thing. So we really appreciate you guys. We appreciate what you're doing and the light you're shedding on the hunting industry and the outdoor world. And man, I feel like we could talk fishing. There's so much other stuff.
Oh yeah, dude. Oh yeah.
Dude, we'll do it again,
And,
man. Thank y'all for the opportunity to share a story, man. We don't get to talk about this stuff on ours sometimes, so
Yeah.
it's cool.
A ton of fun. And thank y'all for having the courage to just be so open about your faith and like making that the forefront of the thing that you got going, man. That's awesome.
You got it, man. I'd love to connect with you guys too at some point. We can get together and maybe do a Texas hunt at some point.
Do that.
Yeah,
That'd be
man.
awesome.
I haven't. Well, I almost. See, I don't want to get going as we're wrapping this thing up. But I almost stepped on a hog this year. Like, it's in Pennsylvania, we have hogs, right? So,
Yeah.
and I was in public land up near Lake Texoma, and I was like sneaking through this bottom. This like it was basically a draw that went into the lake, and I'm like sneaking through, and I pop up on this like flat, and it's like, I don't know, waist high grass, and I'm standing there and looking around. I'm like, man, that looks like a good tree. And I got my muddy climber with me and stuff. And I'm like, take 2 steps, and this hog must have been sleeping in the sun. It was like 11 o'clock in the morning. He jumps up, and he's literally like, 5 feet. Like, he's like, boom, right there. And he didn't wind me because I had the perfect wind.
Yeah.
He jumps up, and I'm like, oh, and I have my bow because it's bow only up there, and I would bow hunt anyway. And he luckily heads the other way, but he takes off, man. I didn't realize how fast those things are. And he was like, he had to be like 200 pounds.
Yeah.
Scared
Yeah.
the crap out of me.
Yeah. I imagine.
We've got them. We've got them for sure.
But we'll have to hook up at some point. But I appreciate you guys so much.
Yeah, man.
thanks,
Thank y'all.
Thanks, guys, for listening. Dave, have a good night. You guys travel safe, and we'll talk to you soon.
Therefore, as you received Christ Jesus the Lord, so walk in him, rooted and built up in him, and established in the faith, just as you were taught, abounding in thanksgiving. Colossians 2:6 and 7.